Hello, beautiful people. Sorry I'm late. It's now 7 o'clock Eastern. I know usually I'm here around 5 Eastern, but today my day got away with me, and this was the first opportunity I had. And I actually might even just do a shorter version of dad advice tonight because, frankly, dad is tired. In fact, why don't we start for a minute about talking about just something that's obvious, but you might not even recognize it about yourself. But I'll just throw it out there in case you've never noticed this. And it's so obvious, but I don't think it's something that I fully appreciated, which is that if you're tired, if you're hungry, you just don't have the same control of yourself. And so you shouldn't be making decisions if you're tired, if you're hungry. And just, it's obvious, but I'll just throw it out there because I know for me, it was actually kind of new information at some point, probably in the last 5 or 10 years. And then for kids in general, that's always the question. Are they tired? Are they hungry? That's it. Because most of the time, if kids aren't happy, like young kids, they're either tired or they're hungry. If kids crying, like a baby, chances are they're tired or they're hungry. It's just like 80% of the time, 90% of the time. And it keeps on going to we're adults that when we're tired or hungry, that's when this stuff happens. So I want to go ahead and post some stuff in. Had 3 questions come in last night through DMs. I'm going to go and talk to those, answer those things. One was on the live stream on YouTube, and then the other 2, came in through Reddit. But again, excuse me, I am sorry that it's a little bit late today. And then, also, I guess I should share, I started a kind of a meta channel. So if people, I guess we're saying they couldn't find me, because I guess it's somewhat hard. People don't understand. So anyway, there's now an r/VDad, virtual dad, that you can kind of subscribe to, and then you can watch it there at your leisure. And then also what I'll try to do is if I'm not going to show up on a day or something like that, I'll try to put some information there too. So, all right, so we got here. I'm going to throw in the general information in case. Cool. But it's interesting, someone kind of, I was reading through I think it was yesterday's chat, and someone kind of said, "Hey, Dad, can you tell me I'm proud, that you're proud of me?" And that's kind of like, I'm thinking about that. Like, on the one hand, I think we all need somebody to tell us we're proud, right? I mean, that's what we look to our parents for. It's what we look to our friends for. It's what we look to our bosses for. It's what we look to society for. We're always looking for that affirmation, right? And so I'm wondering, like, is that a role that I should play or not? Like, is that a healthy thing or not? For you, for me? Saying I don't know. So, but I'd love an argument either way. Feel free to kind of comment on your thoughts on that. Is that a healthy thing, or is that actually a rather unhealthy thing? Or is it a healthy thing, or is it an unhealthy thing and I do it anyway because that's what some people need? I don't know. So it did have some questions here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these. And I'll start with the one that was on the YouTube stream. Nope. Oh, looks like I got kicked out on Reddit. So I'm going to go ahead and start that back up. So go ahead and do that. Let's throw dad advice in here. And swap the screen. All right, so get that back again, which means I now also have to go and put the information back in the channel for people, but it's all good. So certainly interesting. It's just cool that we can do this, isn't it? Just kind of have an opportunity to learn from random strangers. I think that's pretty cool. So I'm going to grab that, throw the information in again. If for some reason it happens again, we'll just kind of call it a day. Some days, maybe that's just that not only am I tired, but Reddit itself is tired. So that's there. All right. Let's see where we were here. Oh, so here's the question. This is a question from the YouTube stream. Hi, don't know where else to put it since you haven't posted your latest video yet, but I feel like I need to get this off my chest. Hope you'll get a chance to reply. I know this is probably not what you had expected. Someone would get an answer to why they do something, and I don't expect you to actually know the solution or anything. Just felt that I should tell it to you for some reason. So, thank you for sharing. So you said that for people to figure out why they do what they do, they should ask themselves why until they get to the root cause. I've done this thought exercise before, and every time I come to the same conclusion. Everything that I do is because I'm afraid to die. For example, I work to earn money in the hopes that when I'm 80, they invent a wonder drug that allows people to live longer and it costs a fortune. I have that fortune. Everything seems to be built on this. I just can't grasp the concept of death, and I've had this since I was a kid. I think I even remember the moment I got this fear when I was 7 or so. No one had died back then. I just realized that I could, and I cried for quite a while. So yeah, I don't think there's a solution to this, but if you decide to answer this in one of your future videos, please let me know, since I'll probably be slaving away and miss it. P.S. Thank you for the great work you do. You're welcome. So here's, right, we've talked about what's our big false truth, right? It's our truth, but it's false. It's a false belief. So he's saying that as he gets under everything, his motivating factor is that he's afraid to die. So, which is interesting. You know, it's not a typical false belief, because it's not really a false belief, right? This is a truth. We're all going to die. That's what we all have in common, is that eventually we'll all move on from this world. So first of all, just to point out, I don't know that this is necessarily a false belief, because I'm not saying this isn't, so it's not, there's a difference, I guess, between the things that motivate you and false beliefs. False beliefs are going to be something more about yourself. And so I just want to differentiate, but I do think this can certainly be a motivating factor, fear of death. So a couple things come to mind, just as you might want to explore death a little bit. The first thing is that here in the US, at least, and I don't know where you are, we don't have a really good relationship with death. We pretty much ignore it, right? I mean, you can ask yourself how many times you've been to a cemetery, or ask yourself, you know, we just try to, we know it's there, but we kind of, in an unhealthy way, push it under. So the first thing I would kind of throw out there is appreciate, maybe look at, see how some other cultures approach death, right? So broaden your horizons and broaden your perspectives. I'd also share that it might be that you just need to accept death so you don't fear it. Sometimes accepting how we feel removes the burden of it. So for example, if we're sad, that's why I'm always talking about feeling your emotions. So if you're sad about something, you can either compartmentalize that or you can accept it. So I would say with fear of death, it's a similar thing where you can just say, I recognize that I have this fear and I accept it. I accept that I will die and I'm scared of it, and feel that fear. Feel that fear of not existing in a real way. And that also sometimes can lighten the burden of an emotion when we actually bring it in as opposed to try to push it away, right? Because as long as we're pushing it away, we're using all of this energy and all this emotional space that actually creates attachment to it. Whereas once we can kind of sit with it and accept it, in some ways it just gets lighter and dissipates a little bit. That's been my experience. Maybe you'll find that too. Um, I also woke up. I remember. I mean, distinctly remember it. I was in Hebrew school in seventh grade. No, it's younger, third or fourth grade. And I remember all of a sudden being extremely afraid of death. And it connected me to my grandfather who'd passed before my time. I'd never met him. And all of a sudden, it was like this thing switched on. I was like, oh, wow, like this is real. Like, and I remember sitting crying in the principal's office about this, this new concept that all of a sudden I'd become aware of. So I think at the end of the day, what you really can do is you can grasp the concept of death. And so I'm trying to think of other things I found. I mean, I've found some comfort in death personally, as I've had some experiences in life which make me question certain realities. So now I'll give you a good example. I'll give you a great example. I just heard this on a podcast the other day. I thought it was really quite brilliant. And the podcast, the guy is like, it was a podcast I heard on Spotify. It was about a guy that was struck by lightning, and he was struck by lightning. And when he kind of he had a near-death experience. And when he came back, he could play piano, which he'd never played before. And you've heard stories like that. But he said something that struck me very interesting. He said, why do we assume that when we die, we go away? Right now, again, I'm not talking from the religious belief would be that we die, we go to heaven, right? But why does that have to be the basic scientific thought that when we die, we dissipate? Perhaps, right? We don't know. We could make the assumption that when we die, something does happen. Some aspect of us does go somewhere. And I thought that was interesting, because the reality is that even though there's no evidence either way, in general, I like to say, if there's no evidence, let me choose the direction I'd rather believe. And that can perhaps bring some comfort. And then the other thing was just my own experiences. And I'll share this experience. I was once in a lot of pain, emotional pain. And at the end of that experience of pain, I ended up in this mental space of interconnectedness with everything. And it's a common experience, I think. I mean, I think people have it on shrooms, and I think people have it on psychedelics. And I think, right, I think there's, I've had actually on breath work, when I've done some breath work, I've had different experiences in life that have gotten me to similar places, right? I think that's all of these different, I'll call tools, right? Meditation, they all kind of end up showing you kind of oneness from a different angle. So you can form a better, more whole understanding of it yourself. But anyway, for me, I did have this experience where I was in a lot of pain, and it was so much pain. And this is kind of when I kind of, in some ways, got out of my own thinking process, that I just had this interconnected feeling with the world. And I don't even remember it exactly anymore. It's now been 9 or 10 years. It's been a long time. But there was something comforting in this interconnectedness with the world that made me realize that it's not just me sitting here, but I'm interconnected with everything. And even when I go away, I'm just changing state, and I'm still interconnected with everything. So that's something I experienced, and it took away a lot of my fear of death. So that might be looking to maybe have some of these experiences that, it's not, and again, this is not something that I would tell you is true. It's a truth for me, right? So it's an experience I had. But sometimes having that experience helps you at least say, oh, you know what? I felt something, I've experienced something. And then you can bring that back into your own thought process. But I think all of us are scared of death. I think we're all ignoring death. That's what's going on in America. We all constantly are ignoring our own demise because it's too hard for any of us to deal with. So it's just you particularly were able to step out of that a little bit and find your own, different path. But good luck as you think more about it. And please, if you got some additional thoughts, happy to talk about it. So, okay, so I had 2 DMs last night. I had 2 DMs last night, so let me talk about those for a minute because they were good questions, really good questions, really thought-provoking questions. So I'll pull those out. So this one came, all right, this came from, okay, hello, I watched your stream yesterday and was intrigued. I asked a question, but you ran out of time. You mentioned false beliefs, and I stated that my false belief is I live in a hyper-capitalistic world. I work as a teacher who's underpaid and underappreciated. I'll never make enough money to get by as a teacher. The highest salary here starts at $60K. I'll never be able to pay bills, save for dreams, buy a newer car, buy a home, have enough in savings for emergencies, and I probably should not be having a child I'll be having. Is this a false belief? Forgive me for being a bit cynical, but I just don't see the hope. And if I was worse off, as in had no college education, would this not be the reality so many Americans face? I get the hope you're trying to offer, and yet can't help but see that it comes from a place of privilege. Help me see past that. So a lot of thoughts. The first thing I just want to go, and I really think that hopefully someday someone will call me and we can go through this exercise of finding our false beliefs. Because again, this is a false belief, but it's not that motivating underlying false belief that I'm trying to express, which I've done a really bad job of explaining, because it's one of those things that I think I can help someone identify themselves through talking it back and forth, and then you can see what I'm talking about. But it's much harder for me to clearly, this is the second kind of thing where someone's kind of brought this up, and that's not what I've been trying to articulate. So just to start with that. So now, but let's talk about the general topic you've brought up of the hyper-capitalistic world you live in. So the first thing I'd throw at you is that I think it's sad that as a society, we don't value teachers. I think it's sad as a society, we don't take care. We talk a lot about how there's surplus in the world. We don't take care of people. We don't take the surplus and give it to them because we're all greedy as a society. But the reality is that that's the society you live in. And I think it's important to realize that you have a choice. You have a choice to be a teacher, or you have a choice to do something else. Now, unfortunately, teachers don't get paid anywhere what they're worth, and they don't get appreciated anywhere near what they should be. In fact, none of us get appreciated anywhere near what we should be, right? Which is unfortunate, right? I hope that everyone listening today has somebody in their life that's given them some appreciation this day, this week, this month. I think for a lot of us, we go, dry spells of no appreciation for long periods of time. And that's a hard thing in a society where we're raised to try to achieve appreciation. So, but I think it's important for you to realize that you have a choice to be a teacher or a choice to go for another profession. And be thankful of the fact that you live in a country that allows for opportunity. And it's not an easy choice. It's not. A lot of life is about making hard choices and making choices between two things that we really don't want to choose between. But in order for us to get what we want, sometimes we have to do it. And the problem is, if you don't see the choice, then that's where bitterness comes in. Because we get into a situation where we feel hopeless, and the hopelessness creates some bitterness. But I think we have to bring it back to ourselves and take responsibility for ourselves, because we don't want to be bitter, right? You don't want to be hopeless. Rather, own it and say, this is a choice I'm making. This is a sacrifice I'm making. Or choose it, make another choice. So you have a little bit more personal peace, if that makes sense. But having said all that, there's no question that I'm speaking from privilege here. Anybody in the US is speaking from privilege, extreme privilege compared to the rest of the world. Everything's relative, right? And it's amazing to me, that just to the thought, the poorest homeless person in America is richer than most of the world. It's a crazy thought. But I do hope that, and I think we're seeing it with time, some of these things are changing, and they're changing for the better. And that gives me hope for the future. And that's a special idea to me. Okay. And then I had one other from yesterday, and then I'll come to what we have going on today. Okay. This is a little bit more of a convoluted question, but I'll read through it and then we'll go from there. Hey, Dad, I've got a real conundrum. I'm hoping maybe you have a bit of wisdom to throw my way. I'm having a serious issue with my mother and 20-year-old little sister taking the precautions necessary with COVID. I moved them into my house back in January and started preparing for us all to ride out the inevitable storm that I saw coming. We started our full-blown quarantine back in March, and we were doing everything possible to keep from being vectors in this pandemic. About midway through May, they started to relax on the precautions they were willing to take. I tried to gently and kindly remind them of the threat and how we needed to handle ourselves accordingly. After a few weeks of being told I need to stop trying to control them, or I'm 50 years old and not a child, you're not going to tell your mother what to do, I felt as though I had received zero respect to my wishes in my own home. Nonetheless, every time they went into my sister's house with the company she had over, it heightened my anxieties and worries to a point that it was wearing on my mental stability. Taking action is the only thing that has helped me cope with this, and they were actively taking that away from me. I finally blew my lid. My behaviors were pretty deplorable. I basically threw a massive sleep-deprived fit. There we go, talking about sleep deprivation, what we were talking about earlier. That was filled with some incredibly hateful words. My brain was moving before my brain processed what I was even saying. I was greatly at fault in my actions there, and I'm not sure I'll ever be able to make them entirely right again. We finally came to the conclusion that this is an incredibly toxic dynamic that we have between us, and I told them that they need to find their own place to stay. This was met with guilt trips of how ashamed my father would be if he were to see this. How can you kick your own mother and sister out? They finally heard me the other day when I pointed out where my desires for them are rooted. They want to try to make it work and are trying to follow the precautions, but I'm stuck in a terrible situation because I'm worried that in less than 6 months, they'll be right back this same position, tired of the precautions and treating my wishes like a college kid that's doing kind of things behind the back. So a couple things just to kind of point out. First of all, and also he also mentioned that I have an autoimmune disease and asthma myself. So that's the actually key point that, I just got to the point that I think we have the idea. So actually I have a similar situation that in my own life so I'm divorced, as I've mentioned, and my ex-wife is careful about COVID as I am, is not as concerned with it. Has chosen not to be as concerned, but the problem is, that's not a big deal, but the problem is my kids go back and forth, right? So I had to kind of make a decision. I don't have any pre-existing conditions, but I'm 45 and I'm kind of like, I had to make that decision. What was I going to do? Was I going to say, you know what, my kids aren't coming to my house for an extended period of time, or was I going to take the chance? And it's tough when you're in a situation where you don't really have control, like we talked about earlier. And actually what I did is I said, well, I do have control and I'm going to have to make a choice, because otherwise I'd start getting bitter about it. That's kind of where I've learned these things over the years. So So here's the thing that I think it's about honest communication. The fact of the matter is you've now expressed your position to them in a clear way that they can understand. It took some yelling, perhaps. You're embarrassed about it, and you can apologize. You can continuously apologize. I think the real question that you're asking me now is that are they going to respect your boundaries or not? And I think you're just going to have to pay attention to that, and even go as far as that's what this is all about, boundaries at this point. So you set your boundary. Your boundary was leave. Good for you, right? I think that's the right thing to do. It's your house. If they can't be respectful of your own health in your house, I think that's a perfectly fine thing to do. Guys, you don't have to be here. You're welcome to leave. I'd love you to be here, but the fact is, right, it's you have a choice. You mom, let's forget the sister. You mom, because the sister I think is a little bit easier to tell her to take a hike than your own mom who's living with you. Is like, mom, you have a choice. And your choice is you can stay here and respect how I'm participating in COVID, or you can find somewhere else to go. And I think that's a perfectly acceptable boundary to set. And I would also say, along the same lines, now the boundary becomes, mom, sister, I want you to understand, I'm setting this boundary. If you break the boundary, the consequence is that I'm going to ask you to leave, right? So you set that up now, not when they've gone and done it, but set it up now. So there's no question. You make it clear and say, I love you very much. I'd love for you to be here, but I can't have you sneaking out. I can't have you sneaking around. I need you to be respectful because I'm fearful for my own health. And if you can't do that, I'm asking you, don't stick around. And then you just got to watch them. And if they aren't following what they said, you know what you got to do. And that's just, it's like treating, at the end of the day, sometimes you have to treat your parents like you treat a kid or your friends or your sisters. Like, some people are always going to be kids. And so you have to kind of treat them like kids. So that would be my thoughts on that. All right. So let's see what we got going on in today's live stream comments. Let's see what we got here. I'm a teen. I can't accept myself, and almost maybe do something that I could not have come out from. I'm lost right now. I hide behind a mask, and I'm always exhausted. So just so you know, I think most teens would agree with that statement, the mask statement. In fact, I think most people, they wouldn't necessarily be conscious of it, but I think they would agree with that statement. I once made a limerick. I've always been proud of this limerick. No one has ever appreciated the limerick, but here's how it goes. I am who I am when only I am. And even then, I'm not truly me, but I'm more of myself than I'd otherwise be. Right? I am who I am when only I am, right? But even then, I'm not truly me, but I'm more of myself than I'd otherwise be. And I don't even know if that's a limerick, but I wrote it once, and I wrote that when I was like 18 or 19, and I still remember it, which I don't usually remember things, so it stuck with me. And, but the thought that I would throw at you is I want you to understand that until you learn, so that most people wear all kinds of masks, because that's the only way they feel they can fit into the society that they live in. And the goal is to work on yourself to the point that you have that self-confidence to not need to wear the mask anymore. I still wear a mask sometimes. And I've done a lot of work on myself and a lot of work in my self-confidence. But sometimes there's a mask. So just first of all, I want you to understand very clearly that it's absolutely normal to do that, and that there's a process through which you can get more and more comfortable in your own skin and slowly take off that mask. And give yourself peace. It's not an easy thing. Sometimes it's fearful to take off the mask because you don't know how people will react. Fear is a huge factor in all of our lives in becoming ourselves. So, I just want to kind of recognize that. And you're right, it's exhausting. It's exhausting not to be yourself, right? The goal in life is to first of all, you have to figure out who you are. And then it's to live in your space, right? That means in all your relationships. And that's why even in relationship, it's important. What's one of the goals of my next relationship is someone that I can live in freedom with, right? And live not restricted. But that's the goal. We want to be in flow with life. We want to be in flow with ourselves. We want to be in flow in society. We want to be in flow with life. So, I think really what and it sounds like the struggle for you is self-acceptance versus societal acceptance. And my hope for you is that you can really learn to accept yourself. And I think to do that, it'll probably be saying a big FU to society, which might be your parents. It might be, I don't know what we're dealing with, but typically that's kind of been my experience. And, and then I'd say, if you have the opportunity, maybe you can find a therapist. Maybe your parents will allow you to see a therapist. Maybe you can, I don't know how old you are, you can be all over ages, but, see if you have an opportunity to talk to a therapist. Because sometimes just having that outsider helps give you that confidence, and also just verbalizing things, right? There's so much of us that gets stuck inside us, and just that opportunity to have that safe place to talk about who you really are, right? I don't know if you have that friend that you can talk safely with, but if you have no one you can really talk to, that's a really scary place. So just to have that one person, even if you pay them like the therapist, take off the opportunity of that. So, but I wish you well. I do. I think it's really cool. I think you're gonna knock it out. First thing is awareness, and you got the awareness. So now you're gonna take care of it. What's my advice on abortion? From a throwaway again. Sure, why not? I was talking to my daughter about this last night. So, I believe that a baby should be aborted if the parents aren't ready to raise it. It's about that simple. Yeah, that's my belief. So it's not advice, that's just kind of my belief about abortion. I think that at the end of the day, the world is here for I'll use the word enjoyment, I don't know if that's the right thing, of people, and that a baby doesn't have consciousness to the point that, well, let's put it this way, it has as much consciousness perhaps as a cow or, something else that we might eat. So it doesn't, as much as it kind of, and again, if I really think about killing a cow, I can't really do it. But to me, it's the amount of mental anguish to force somebody not to have an abortion, the amount of responsibility to put on somebody that's not ready to have a kid. I think that's harmful, and I think that harms society. And I also think that it's really ironic that those who are against abortion are pro-death penalty. Right? Is a life a life? Choose. So, I'm always afraid to not be as good as I imagine with my future sons. Maybe a little bit more information. I don't quite understand the question. Batica. Teacher here, thank you. You're welcome. Ravroyd, can you be my dad? I'd be happy to be your virtual dad. Your virtual dad. You sell tent services. I like that. Probably not the way you meant it. All right. Hello, Dad. How are you? I'm wonderful. Thank you. I'm very tired this evening. Tonight, I'm tired. I've been working on 2 deals, and one of them went through, and the other one I'm still working on. So I'm tired. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Zachary, welcome back, sir. And was it a limerick, guys? I don't know. I think once someone said, no, that's not a limerick. But thank you for that. And I think I was kind of mentioning at the beginning, and I posted at the top, I started a kind of a meta channel. So when I can't be here at 5, I'm usually here every day, 5 Eastern. When I can't be, I'm going to try to put it there so people can be aware that I'm not showing up. And then also, I'm just going to link there. Oh, also, if you don't mind, I put a link to my YouTube. I need about 30 more people, and then I can give it a name, and then I'll stop asking people to subscribe to my YouTube channel. But that is something I would like to do. So if you can help me with that, that's awesome. A very close friend of mine, whom I've developed feelings for, is moving away soon. She helped me out of a bad place. We've been through so much together and conquered so much together. Should I go for it and tell her how I feel, or keep it to myself? So the obvious thing that everyone's going to say is go for it. Let's see if we can give it a little more nuance. Look, if you really do have feelings for somebody, I do think that it's the right thing to try. And you can even say, look, I wouldn't say it this way, but I think look, I'll tell you what I would do. Actually, I'd probably be too scared. I'd chicken out. Let's be honest. But if I was giving myself advice, I'd say do it. That's the reality. I think that life's too short to not try to grab the opportunities that are in front of us. I think part of the question would be if she is moving away. See, here's the only thing that changes this a little bit is she's moving away. So if she's moving away and there's no way for you to maintain a relationship, or there's no way for her to change her mind about moving away, or there's no way for you to move with her, then I don't know that that really solves anything, right? Because what's the point just admitting how you feel to somebody? I don't know that does anything really, because you can't just like what's the word? Unrequited? That's not the right word. But it's like it's kind of love that can't be realized. And that has its own complications that come with it. So if she's really moving away and there's nothing you can do about it, you're going to have that breakup anyway. And you don't think you could do a long distance relationship. If you think you could do a long distance relationship, again, it's a different decision process. Then maybe actually it doesn't make sense to say anything at that point. But, if there's an opportunity for relationship, real relationship, then I think you should go for it. Do a flip. Yeah, I can't do a flip. The phone lines are open. Yes, feel free to call. And thank you for the silver. Yeah, somebody wants to call. The line should be at the top. What's up, dog? It's like a hammer for, right? You guys have a hammer for at home? What's a hammer for? Anything else? Or a Matta baby. Does anybody have a Matta baby? What's a Matta baby? Nothing, baby. What's the matter with you? I do like this. Okay. Opinion on buying milk and cigarettes. I'll be right back and I'll let you know. I lost my dad a few years ago. I'm sorry. That sucks. Any advice on coping with the loss of a loved one? That question gets asked here a lot, actually. I'll just share what I've kind of experienced myself, which is that they're in my heart. I am, in some ways, and this is some of the thing I was talking about earlier, this aspect of death. So I had an uncle that I became very close with towards the end of his life. I wasn't particularly close with him, and then I was kind of going through my divorce when he got a cancer diagnosis, and we spent about a year and a half hanging out quite a bit, and we got really close. And then he passed away. And what I kind of came to realize was that, in some ways, he's still inside me. And that gave me some peace. Obviously, time is the first thing. In terms of specific advice, it's make sure you're really feeling your sadness still. Understanding that sadness dissipates with time. That's just one of the thankful things we have about how our memory works, is that over time, I was just talking to my son earlier today about this, how I was talking, I was kind of saying, appreciate your siblings because they're really going to be with you your whole life. Whereas your friends, they kind of come and go. And I was like, even like the girl that I had like this huge crush on, I just remembered I had this huge crush on this girl like 30 years ago. And there was a time I can't imagine if you'd ever said, hey, future Josh, there's a time when you're not even remember her name. Yeah, and I don't even remember her name anymore. So actually, I remember her name now, but it took me like a minute to remember it. So, but just these ideas that over time, the pain kind of dissipates, right? It's a question of loss. So the pain of loss dissipates over time, and recognizing that, feeling them in your heart and taking them with you, and knowing that in some ways they are with you, because we are all kind of interconnected in that way. And then, a few years, that's not a lot of time, a few years. If you're still feeling, if you're still crying about it, that's one thing. That might be worth exploring, but, crying constantly, crying every once in a while is fine. But I think it's normal. It's normal. These are instrumental people in our lives. And we should be sad. That's the opportunity that we had with them that makes us sad. So, but I'm sorry you lost your father. Okay. Sometimes I scare people off as I become reliant on them. Usually a teacher, my boss, or a professional. I open up to them maybe too much. When they start replying, I feel hurt. But I feel suppressed if I don't talk about myself. What can I do? So I guess the obvious answer here is that you need to become more self-reliant. You need to learn to stand on your own better, and have more confidence in your own ability to succeed. And again, a boss threw me off because professional threw me off because teachers and bosses, they're kind of positions of power. And so I get that, you're trying to maybe have them help you make certain decisions as opposed to make the decision yourself, because that makes you less anxious perhaps about making the wrong decision. And maybe professional means a doctor, professional, or something like that. So and first of all, I wouldn't say you're scaring people off. I think it's more that they're living their life and they don't feel that their role is to step in to the point that you're asking them to step into. And clearly you're recognizing that. And so I think what it's really about is learning to use yourself for that knowledge, right? Learning to trust yourself. And then you won't need to go to somebody else for every little thing. And if this is some aspect, so we can talk about how can we learn to trust ourselves better. I guess we could talk about that a little bit. And I was just asking, it's like an OCD thing, in which case maybe some therapy or some meds could be helpful. But and by the way, as just everyone knows, there's not many people here, today. So I assume everybody kind of knows I'm not professional. I'm just a dude giving advice on the internet with some life experience. So take it for what it is. And today I'm a tired dude on the internet giving life experience. So let's talk about how can we create more confidence in ourselves. What are the tools that we can use to do that? More self-confidence. So I would say, what have I done? Well, the first thing is being able to clearly articulate what I'm trying to understand and break down the question in a way that I can comprehend the whole thing. And then I can start researching each thing. But I remember a time when I wanted somebody just to tell me what to do. Here's one thing I do. Question yourself, growing up, were one of your parents the type they would kind of tell you what to do? Like if you didn't know, you'd ask them and they'd tell you what to do and you just kind of did it. So I think that was something that I realized and I had a parent like that. And so what I had to kind of learn was, well, wait a second. And that's probably how it was in their house going up the generations. And I would do the same thing with my teachers. And I'd kind of allow them to make some of the decision for me because I wasn't fully living in my own space. And so I guess I learned how better to inhabit my own space and take responsibility for myself. But I think that recognition of knowing that it kind of happened in my life allowed for some better understanding. So that's what that would be my suggestion to you is look in your own upbringing and see if there was that one person that always answered everything for you. And then once you see that, you can kind of say, oh, well, here's the pattern. And now I'm just going to take that to myself. And just make that your mantra for the next month is that I can take care of myself. I can take care of myself. That's your mantra. Come back. Let me know how it works. How do I stop being annoying? Well, if you know you're being annoying, then you just stop. And it's about becoming awareness and creating awareness around when you're annoying somebody. I just realized, oh yeah, never mind. That's probably right. I'm always wondering like how many people are actually here, but because today it said I have like 14 people here, and that makes sense. Yesterday it was like there were more people, but there were just a few people. So I just never kind of know. But based on the comments, I guess you can kind of know how many people are hanging out. So how do I stop being annoying? So I think it's about awareness, and it's about knowing what aspect of your personality can be. First of all, I want you to understand you're not annoying. There are people that might find you annoying, just like there's plenty of people that would find you funny and fun and right. So first of all, I don't want you to see yourself as an annoying person, but it's an action that you do that you've noticed that some people react negatively to, and you want to create some change around. So I think that's the right thing to do, right? We want to, as much as possible, make ourselves pleasant to be around, so people want to be around us. So but I think my gut is that you've already figured it out, which is you have awareness that you can be annoying, and typically there's some aspect of I'm thinking some type of internal feeling that you're feeling that you want to have someone paying attention to you. You want to be important. And that's what makes you right. You're egging them on because you're getting that reaction because at least now they know you're there. They know you exist. So pay attention to the feeling and the message in your mind. There's probably a quiet message there before you become annoying, before you take that annoying action of trying to get attention for yourself. So does that make sense? So try to pay attention to that. And then, because a lot of it is once we have this awareness of what's motivating us, we can create change. So I'm not sure how much time I have, but it says 40 seconds on my clock. I'm looking on the other thing, it says a minute and a half. I'm going to guess I'm out of time. And I'm sorry that I didn't get to the last couple of questions today, but I'll try to start with them tomorrow. But I would like just to give you the remembrance till tomorrow that you're a beautiful person, and that I hope that you can really see that in yourself. And I guess I don't really have time to explain it all today, but I want you to know that I see you as beautiful, and the world probably sees you as beautiful. And I hope that you can see that you are beautiful too. Be well.